Before we start, if y'all could just turn your cell phones to mute so that we don't have any interruptions.
All right. Thank y'all all for coming. We're gonna start. County Judge Wayne Wolf is gonna start with an opening prayer, and he's also got some remarks he wants to make.
About the center of the room. Sure. Well, you may want to stay seated just for a moment. I hate to get ahead of the prayer and the pledge, but they gave me the mic first, so I want to share a few things with you. And I do for a number of reasons. One you'll see as I go through it. I'll try to be very brief and very quick, because I'm hoping maybe our representatives can tag on some things. For instance, I've been asked a lot of questions, receiving a lot of calls, why Rains County was not included in that initial 77 counties. And nobody seemed to know at the time, and I'm hoping our representatives have some more information they can feed you. I do know that I reached out to the surrounding counties. Not all of them were included in that as well. And we've done everything that we know to do. We've filed a local disaster declaration. We've filled out paperwork, DSO. We've submitted it, waiting on the state. Haven't seen the latest list to see if we're on it or not. But I've had a number of calls and a number of complaints. Why aren't you doing something to get us on that list? Just know that we've done everything that we can to get on those lists and get help for our citizens in Rains County. I don't want to be the one that spoils the pep rally by running in and hollering the building's on fire and everybody leave. But I want to share briefly some of the challenges that we face. I've been sitting in my office there right through the entire COVID situation and through the recent storm. And I've gotten calls like, why don't you shut the county down? Calls, don't let anybody in the county or don't let anybody out. Why aren't you enforcing the mask laws? Why don't you go to the cafes and stuff and do all of those things? So we're getting it from both sides. Most recently getting, why aren't you doing something to get the COVID vaccine into our county? And they don't send that to the judge's office. We don't have a freezer. But our Brookshire's, local Brookshire's pharmacy, they have a waiting list a mile long. We had scheduled through FEMA 100 doses last Friday, and I guess you know what happened last Friday. That was pushed off. This week they told me that's kind of on hold. We don't know when they're coming, but only 100. So I just kind of wanted to update you a little bit about some of the challenges that we face. But I also want to tell you that we face some other challenges. I know this is the Republican Party that's putting this together, but I tell you that politics is a mess, not only in, here locally in the state, but all around the U.S. It's like watching a train wreck from inside the dining car. We know we can't do anything about it. We just hope somebody's there to clean up the mess and help us when the wreck happens. People are telling me, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to speak more than just do the opening prayer. I've had a number of people, you state representatives need to hear this loud and clear, that are telling me, I don't think I'll ever vote again. Mm-hmm. Anybody else hearing that? Mm-hmm. I don't think I'll ever vote again. Now, we're not reaching the masses. We're not reaching the people that really think that it matters what we're doing. And it doesn't matter what you say or what you do. If they're not going to come out and vote, we've got a big problem. And we need good people in office. We need good people at the polls voting. And we need to somehow convince them that all is not lost. And that's, if you take nothing away from what I'm saying, take that away today. Because there are not one, not two, but hundreds telling me personally, and I don't know how many more that are being telling others, that I don't think I'll ever vote again. That I don't trust politics, I don't trust politicians, I don't want to have anything to do. And I know that the politicians seem to focus on the almighty dollar, trying to save us a dollar, and I hope our representatives are trying to save us some dollars, and I'm trying to keep up with all the bills and some things like that. But I watch the Band-Aids being put on buckets when the building's on fire, And what I'm seeing is the national debt just skyrocketing. I even saw on Facebook this week, somebody said, Christy said I'm not worthy. She just gave me the mic too quick. I saw somebody arguing the fact that said, well, China doesn't own most of our debt, Japan owns it. Folks, it doesn't matter who owns it, it's still debt, right? It's still debt. And we're watching it just skyrocket. Nobody's fixing that. They're giving money away like it's free, and calling it free. And I tell you, when I see all the politicians, because I've seen Texas emerged upon by a lot of politicians using the latest catastrophic event to kind of further their career, not help anybody, not do anything for anybody. And at the same time, all of this is going on. And while they're focused on furthering their career, our freedoms are being lost, our education system is shut down, and the morals are eroding. And one of my pet peeves is our churches are empty. Yeah. I'm, you know, if you think I'm kind of on my soapbox, I really am. But I think while the old devil himself has got us focused on all of these things that are happening around the world, God is trying to get our attention to call us back to focus on Him. Amen. So, having said that, I would ask that you join me in prayer. If you want to stand and remove your caps, please do. And silence your phones. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your amazing love, your amazing grace. We just thank you for the country that we live in, and we pray once again that you would bless this country, and even more so our country bless you. Father, we just pray for a change of heart among the politicians as well as the average citizen, that we'd turn our focus back to you, that we'd realize the true source of our power and our strength and our peace and our joy. And Father, while the old devil has the world focused elsewhere, and our churches are empty, we pray that you would give us the servant hearts. We don't need leaders in Washington. We don't need leaders in Austin. We need servants, those with a servant heart, there to serve the community and the people around about it. We ask that you once again bring our focus, bring our attention back to you. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen. Amen.
Thanks, Greg. That was good opening remarks. In fact, exactly what I think we probably all needed to hear. So grateful for that. Thank you. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance now. You might as well go ahead and stand if you're next to Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, so Congressman Fallon couldn't be here today because they voted at 2 o'clock this morning on the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. So Christy's going to talk, and we have some on Pat's behalf, and we also have some representatives from Pat's office here that are going to. Do y'all want to come, or do you want them to come up? Okay, good.
Thanks, Jenkins. My name is Christy Ratliff. I'm your current Rains County Republican Party chair. I'm the one who's been posting a lot about this event, trying to get it organized with my team members, Jenkins, Lazaro Birdwell, who could not be here, who's also a precinct chair like Jenkins, and Debbie Nelson, our former precinct chair, who's in the back there. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate you taking some time out of your Saturday afternoon to come be here with us and to hear our message and to possibly help us promote our message going forward. I'm going to read something from a local resident who, some of you may know him, and he wanted really bad to be here today, but he is currently on the way to the hospital. He and his wife have been struggling with COVID, and so sending out our prayers to them and hope that he's going to recover quickly. But he wanted to be here in person to give this message, but since he's not here, I'm going to read it for him. Fred and Sue Worley, I've known them for many years. They're very sweet people. Fred has been working a great deal lately trying to get the 2 Mile Bridge renamed in the honor of Staff Sergeant Sean Henry McNabb, who was Special Ops Night Stalker from Quinlan, Texas. Sean was killed on a mission in Afghanistan when the helicopter he boarded crashed, ending his young life. And Fred wanted to be here to say thank you to everyone who has been working so hard to make this happen, to Senator Bob Hall and Chris from his office, Representative Cole Hefner and his staff, and Representative Brian Slayton and Chad from Mr. Slayton's office, and also Representative Pat Fallon, who could not be here today, for helping get the word out and helping to move this legislation through in Austin and DC. Huge prayers out to Fred and Sue. Hopefully they're gonna be just fine. But if everybody could say a few prayers for them, I appreciate it. All right. So before we go on any further, I'm going to introduce the representatives from Pat Fallon's office in just a moment. But first, I'd like our SREC rep to come forward, Stephen Stanley. SREC is State Republican Executive Committee. All of the Republican Party chairs and precinct chairs vote to elect these two individuals. This is Jerry Fisher. We have one female representative and one male representative, and they represent our district at the state Republican Party. And Stephen's going to share a little bit about what the process is for the party, what's the purpose of the party, what it is that we do, and how you can get involved.
Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be down here again. Right after being elected into this position, I came down, y'all had an event down here, and Senator Hall and I, and Kate, where's Kate? Oh, Kate's back here in the back, Senator Hall's wife. We were able to come down here and attend an event with Range County GOP, and appreciate that opportunity. One of the things, as Chrissy had said, during our state convention, the delegates and alternates, they are the governing body of the state GOP. In between conventions, the SRECs that you elect at convention, we are basically the board of directors for the Republican Party of Texas. Every 2 years, once the convention's over, you during the convention, you vote on, out of the 337 planks that are in the GOP platform, you vote on your top priorities. The top 8 priorities this year, Jerry is our resolutions committee chair in our SRECs. I'm on the legislative priorities committee. And I actually, and the reason why I got my Second Amendment hat on is I actually chair the subcommittee to make sure that we get constitutional carry passed in the legislature this session. But the number one priority that was voted out was election integrity. And with what we went through in November election, I think that's probably on the foremost front line burner for most of the grassroots people in Texas. The second one is religious freedom, then monument protection, children and gender modification, then constitutional carry, the abolition of abortion. And I'm going to stop on that one right there right quick. Probably most all Republicans are 100% in line with the abolition of abortion. We have a new state rep, and I wish he could be here, nothing against you, Representative, but a new state rep just back to the west of us here, Brian Slayton. He did something that nobody ever has done in the House. As a freshman House member, as a seasoned House member, he got 45 Republicans to sign on to abolishment of abortion. Now, that's not a bill being in front of, the big debate or anything, but when the first day that they were in session, they voted on the rules, and he asked for an amendment to the rules to where we vote that the two bodies vote to abolish abortion in Texas before we rename it road or bridge. It sounded pretty common sense to a lot of folks, but immediately 41 members signed on to it immediately that day. It still didn't pass because of the simple majority side of things, but he got 41 people signed on right then. The next day you got 24 hours to amend your vote. 4 more people signed on, and even 1 Democrat actually signed on to that as well. So it gives basically a great leg up when the bills actually get filed to help push through the House. Then there's school choice, and then monument protection. And in the 8 priorities, like I said, I'm on the legislative priorities committee. There are 16 of us, and we've broken up into the 8 subcommittees. And like I said, I chair the subcommittee for constitutional carry. And right now, the only bill that we've 100% signed on to support is Representative Biederman's House Bill 1238. And it mostly aligns with that, our priority. Senator Hall has SBJ 24 that actually would be, if passed in both houses, it would go into a ballot in the fall, that if passed, it would prevent the legislature from doing anything to impede our Second Amendment constitutional rights. So we're watching that, and, you know, if there's a bill, you know, we'll be tracking that. If there's nothing else better, you know, we're tracking, and we'll support Senator Hall's bill, our SBJ 24 as well. So that's a quick synopsis of what goes on. I know I don't want to cut into Senator's time or anybody else's time here, but in between the conventions, like I said, during, you know, the SRECs, we are the functioning body to carry out the will of the delegates from the convention, and it's our responsibility to try to work with our legislature to get your priorities, not my priority, not Jerry's priority, or individual members of the House or the Senate, but the delegation get your priorities passed in the House and the Senate. We haven't been, that hadn't been successful over the last 8 or 10 years. We've only got 1 or 2 of our priorities after each convention actually passed in the legislative session the next time. So we hope to have a lot better, because we're going around the state talking to people. We actually have, and I didn't bring up the piece of paper, but on the Texas GOP website, if you go to the right-hand title bar, there's one of your icons that you click on, Texas LEGE, that you can actually get updates on where your top priorities are going through the process, what bills we're following. You can actually get email updates, and you can actually get involved and help us help you. So if you ever have any questions, I've got some cards, Drew's got some cards. We're here to help you. If you don't have time to go down to Austin, there's always, you know, pick up the phone, letter write, contact us. Obviously contact your legislators directly, but we're here to help wherever we can.
Thank
And then Jerry,
Okay,
real
I'm
quick.
sorry, y'all didn't come here to me. But, just like you, after the inauguration, for 2 weeks, I was getting phone calls and text messages saying, I'm so disappointed, I'm not gonna vote ever again, we need a third party. All this stuff is false, guys. We're still on target, but we need to start right now and get ready for 2022 and vet all your candidates that are running. Make sure they're standing for what you believe in and what you value. And stay on, like you said, capital.texas.gov, and then up in the right-hand corner is Texas Legislature, or Texas LEG, and you will find all of the bills that are being sponsored. And right now, contact your representatives and tell them which legislative party you're very interested in and what you want passed, and stay with them and let them know you're supporting them if they support the legislative priorities. That's all.
In any resolutions that y'all as a county, you know, you're at your executive meetings and such, if you have a resolution that's passed, it actually goes to Jerry's committee at our quarterly meetings. And this time with Chairman West, he didn't want us always to meet down in Austin. For years and years and years, all of the SREC meetings have been in Austin. We're going around the state. This next one, next month, we're actually going down to Laredo. And just like your House and Senate members, I mean, we don't get paid. I mean, this is out of our pocket. We're flying down to, you know, do this, but that way, you know, we can share the love, you know, spread it around where everybody has an opportunity to come out and speak to your board.
Okay, real quick, vet your candidates, like I said, to make sure they're true blue Republicans and they believe what you believe. And we have someone here, Troy Jackson, who is one of our field directors for the Republican Party of Texas. Raise your hand, Troy, and say hi, you're here.
He was at CPAC, flying directly for this and flying back. Y'all mean a lot to the Republican Party.
That needs help, you know, understanding the process, please contact Troy and he'll help you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify one thing. People ask me all the time how they can get involved. This process that they're talking about is one of the ways you can get involved. You can either volunteer to be a delegate at the state convention, and I didn't know this before I became the chair. But I think Debbie, you may remember, we, could have sent 11 delegates, or maybe 7 up to 11, somewhere in there, and we had 3 people volunteer, 3. And, you know, that's our voice, the voice of our county, and we were so short because we didn't have enough volunteers. If you don't want to be a delegate, you can write a resolution and bring it to me, and I'll help push it through that process and try to get it on the plank and get the whole state, the Republican Party and the whole state to vote on that and try to make it a legislative priority. That's how it happens, and that's how you make a difference. That's what everybody knows, that there are things you can do. You yourself, even if you don't have a whole lot of time, there's things you can do to make a difference, starting right here in Waynes County. So,
I'm sorry, I have one more thing. Next Saturday in Rockwall County, we are having a workshop, a rally for SD2 for the legislative priorities presentation. And someone from each subcommittee is going to be there speaking on the rally, each legislative priority. It's from 9 to 3, right, Paul? 9 to 3. And it's at our courthouse. No? Where is it?
The center here.
Oh, it's at the center downtown.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
there, one, two,
In Rockwall. In Rockwall. Steve and I are speaking. You have to go and register, and if you want to, I can send the link to you, Christy. Okay. And send it out. It's next Saturday, 9 to 3, at the center of Rockwall.
Thanks. Okay, so I just want to say a little bit about Senator Pat Fallon, who's not able to be here with us today. I spoke to his office about this time yesterday. At that, up until that point, he was still planning to catch a flight out last night to be here with us today, and I know he was excited about that because Waynes County is very dear to him. Jenkins, Lazaro, and I helped to get him on the ballot last November. And he spent a lot of time with us, talking to us about what our priorities were and what he could do to help Waynes County. And I know that we're very dear to him, and I know he would be here if he at all could. But at the moment, he's actually on a flight because he didn't get finished in D.C. last night until around 3 a.m. Our lovely Speaker Nancy scheduled the hearing and the vote on our $1.9 trillion stimulus package to begin at 10:30 p.m. last night. And so he had to cancel his flight, and he tried to get another flight, but the flights are not as regular as they usually were before COVID, and so he's just not able to be here today. But he is here with us in his heart, and his representatives are going to get up and speak in a few moments, and we are going to take some questions. If you want to come get one of these forms and write down a question that you have specifically for Congressman Fallon, they will take that back to him, and we're not sure exactly the format just yet, but he will get back to us somehow, either via a video or maybe a virtual town hall at a later date to answer some of those questions. At this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Eliza Beasley with Congressman Pat Fallon's office.
Thank you so much, Christy. And she said it so eloquently because you are truly the heart of Congressman Fallon. The vote was actually at 10:30, and then they moved it. Our speaker moved it to 1:45 a.m. And so a lot of America doesn't realize what's happening over there. Before we went into Congress, we were told there would be a set schedule and votes would be from this date to this date. But this speaker pretty much is doing what she wants. And I don't know what the reason why. I'm sure that everything she does is with motive, but I figure that if they can be moving votes for the members to 1:45, that's just a way for them to be able to continue to move elections as a country wherever they want. And so election integrity is obviously on the #1 top of everyone's mind, and so we would like to be able to answer your questions. As Christy said, you can fill out a paper or come and talk to us. We will take all your questions and we will have them answered either in a video. We've been trying to put together a town hall, but again, as with most things in the Congress right now, nothing is as easy as it seems of just going live and answering questions. Things have to go through certain committees and things like that. But Congressman Fallon's on a flight, and they closed out, as Christy said, this morning at 3 a.m. And so they had to move their 7 a.m. So that they could get a little bit of sleep before they got back on a flight. So they're on their way now. My name is Elisa, and I'm the Special Projects Director for the district, and so I kind of handle all kinds of things, the Academy nominations, the art competition, any special projects that come to our district, the teletown halls, we're going to start setting those up. And then we've just hired Dave Beard, who is in our Texarkana office. So what it was very important to the congressman that we kept as much as we could intact of what Congressman Ratcliffe had. So we kept the office in Sherman, kept the office in Rockwell, kept the office in Texarkana. And so we have all those offices staffed and ready to work for you. If there's anything you need, just go on Congressman Fallon's page, and there's the addresses as well as email so that you can contact any of our representatives. Regarding one of the big things, obviously, at the top of our tongues is the storms and assistance. Rains County is currently one of the counties that is included in individual assistance. I'm sure that Bob Hall and the other representatives have been giving you information, but just to stress it again, tdem.texas.gov. If you need individual assistance, please make sure to go and see what assistance is available to you. And if you hit snags, contact our office, and we'll do what we can to help move that along. I just want to address something with the $1.9 trillion stimulus COVID package. Only 9% of that is actually going to COVID, and there are currently 25% of the past COVID funds that have not been spent. They're asking for more money without spending the money that's there. Some of the things that are included in this COVID relief package is $400 million for a subway employees district. 9% of the bill, only 9% of it is COVID relief. And so these are things that we're battling right now. In fact, if you go through the COVID relief bill, a lot of it is for Democratic senators trying to get things paid for in their districts. So the battle is real, and I just want to encourage you to pull the votes when they call you and say, I'm not going to vote because I'm so discouraged. It doesn't matter. There's no election integrity. I'm going to quote from what the judge was talking from the good word. It says, do not grow weary in well-doing. And so we cannot grow weary. This is not the time to pick up our toys and go home. This is not the time. It's a time to dig in our heels and press in and get more and more people involved in the party. Not just going to the polls, but getting involved in the party. This is the party. This is the party. If there's no other party going to come out and we can have all these ideas and grandeurs, we have got to stick with what is true. We've got to lock arms and hold the line. You know, Congressman Fallon talks about this all the time with the team. There's never been a more critical time to hold the line. So I would encourage you to continue not being discouraged. Don't be discouraged in well-doing, because there's still a fight. 2022 is going to be here before we know it, and we can retake the House. There are a lot of things that we can still do, and so we cannot quit now. What's the other thing? I think that was everything. Did you have a question?
I was just going to ask you to repeat that website again.
Absolutely.
Slower a little bit.
tdem.texas.gov, and it's tdem.texas spelled out TXAS.gov. And if you just click on warming centers, it'll take you to the resources that are available through the federal government. You do need to file your insurance claims first and get all of that done, but it is important that if you have a need, that they know about it so that we can see what we can do, whatever resources. So we are available if there's anything that we can do. And again, he sends his heartfelt apologies for not being here. This has been an interesting session, needless to say. So we just keep trucking. We got to go with what we're given and keep moving forward. So thank you for inviting us. Don't stop inviting us. We will be here. He will be here. As long as he is on North Texas soil, he will be here. So thank you so much for offering us this opportunity.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say one more thing about Congressman Fallon. He is on Facebook, and I follow him on Facebook, and he's very engaging, and he does speak to his followers and his constituents regularly through social media, and I've even seen him comment or reply to comments on a number of occasions. So if you want to follow him on Facebook, you'll get to know him really well and understand what he is doing for us in DC.
Yeah, and on that point, he has a personal page, patfallon.com. You search for Pat Fallon, but he can't accept any more friends. Thank you, Facebook. But follow him on his official page. It's Pat Fallon, Congressman Pat Fallon, because whatever he shares on his page, and he does reply to his own messages. That is not Team Fallon. He literally is a night owl, and so he will be on Facebook answering his own comments consistently. And so it's really him. So yeah, that's a great thing.
Thank you. And I want to say just for anybody that's wondering about the election that was mentioned, the precinct chairs and the county chairs in the district voted. We met with and interviewed, I don't know, 14 or 15 people. And I can tell you, speaking for myself, and I think speaking for my colleagues in the Rains County Republican Party, after we met with Pat, I think it was hands down, we knew he was our guy. I don't think there was any question. If there was no pool of people and we could have handpicked somebody to put in that position, I think Pat Fallon would have been our guy. He is an unapologetic conservative Republican, and he is fighting for every single one of us in this room. And he believes probably what most of us believe, if you're a Republican. And even if you're not, because most of the things that we're talking about are just about humanity. They're not about politics. It's not about, and he will be back. I guarantee he'll be here. It's unfortunate he couldn't be here today, but he will be here. I promise you he'll be here. And you want to be here. So.
Out of I think it was 22 different candidates that were vying for that spot on the ballot. And we interviewed, like Dickie said, a good number of them. And out of the 100, I may not have the numbers exactly right, but out of like 144 chairs and precinct chairs that voted on that position, he got like 87 votes out of 144 in our entire district.
There wasn't even a runoff. We thought there would definitely be a runoff, and then it would be decided in a runoff. There was no runoff.
And his closest competitor, I think got maybe 10 votes, five votes. So it was no question that he was the right person for the job. So moving along, I'm going to let Jenkins introduce Senator Hall.
Okay. Senator Bob Hall, thank you for being here. So here's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna let each speaker do about a 10 minutes remarks, and then we're gonna have 2 open forums, and we've got 2 topics we're gonna talk about, and then we'll do some question and answers. And we got a little bit extra time since Pat's not here. All right, thanks, Senator Hall, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Wow, it's a pretty good turnout here today. I see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. So for those of you that don't know, Judge Wolf was talking about politicians. I do not self-identify as a politician. I am new to this. I've never held office before, and I had a lot of life behind me when I came and ran for office, doing lots of other things and not paying attention. Actually, if I was honest, I would say my name is Bob, and I'm a recovering political apathetic, because I didn't have a lot to do with politics before I got involved. In fact, I came to Texas. I'm a transplant. My wife, Kate, is the native Texan, and we were living happily at the beach in Destin, Florida. When one day she handed me a note and said, "This is where I'm going to be in Rockwall, Texas. You care to join me?" That's when I learned that Texans are like monarch butterflies. When the grandkids show up, they come home to roost. And so we moved to Texas, and I'm really glad that we did do that. But how I do self-identify, first of all, I'm a Christian who serves my Lord Jesus Christ first, my family second, and this is my second service in serving the state of Texas, because I serve my country in the U.S. Air Force. And so that's who I look at myself as. This thing of politics is something that other people do. I am here to serve the people of Texas. I'm a constitutional conservative who believes that our founding fathers got it absolutely right with the document they created that stands just below what was written in 66 books of the Bible. And so it is inerrant, and it is not a living document. It says what it is intended to say, and it is just as applicable, it is just as applicable today on each of the subjects as when it was written. And so what I say and what I do is within that framework. And so that's how you can interpret what I say. That's the view I have on life. We're going to come back to a couple of topics here that I have been working on really hard and very busy. Matter of fact, I just got home at about 11 o'clock last night. It's the issue we're having with our electrical grid system. Actually, I've been working on this for the last 7 years of trying to fix this problem that we're now having, and it fell on deaf ears. And so I think now that people understand that electricity is the third most important thing to staying life, that we really can't live without it. The only two things more important are air and water. And now we just learned that you don't even get water without electricity anymore. And so hopefully we get that fixed. And the other is election integrity. Been working on that now for the last 4 years. We had bills last session that would have fixed a lot of the problems we had here in Texas. They got out of the Senate and were killed and died in the House. There was a lot of opposition, and I'm not just not going to talk about that, but it should have passed last time. It didn't. I think it has a recognition that it has to be fixed this time. The problem we have with the opportunity for error and the opportunity for fraud is big enough to drive a truck through, and a lot of people found a way to do that. But we will never eliminate fraud or error as long as we have humans involved in it, because we know the heart of man is basically evil, and man will always be looking to find a way to beat the system, but we can make that hole very, very small for them, and we'll do that. And I will have something to pass out for you on what we put out on what needs to be changed in a complete revamp of how we go about elections. As far as the power, I will come back and talk about that when we get to it. We came precariously close to completely losing all electric power in Texas for several months. When I say precariously close, I'm talking about seconds away from it. And so we can never, ever, ever let that happen again. This problem could have been solved by the legislature 10 years ago in 2011, and they kicked the can down the road. I do not want the 92nd legislature in 2031 looking back at the 87th and 2021 saying, why did you guys keep kicking that can down the road? We need to solve it, and we can solve it, and we need to do that now. As far as what's happening in the Senate, or on the Senate side, and I'll let my good friend Cole tell you about what's happening over in the House, we approach life a little bit differently in the two bodies, and but we all seem to come together in the end and work together. And I really appreciate Cole. We've worked working with him, and we're both actually good at working across the aisle. Because here in Texas, we don't have, the problem they have in Washington, for the Democrats and Republicans who don't even speak to each other, we don't have that here in Texas. I have amended Democrat bills. I have accepted Democrats' amendments on my bill. I've got some that now want to joint author on my bill on grid security. Our battle here in Texas, truly, is more between Emory, Texas, and Dallas, Texas. The big cities and the little cities. That's where our real battles are. And it's because of the nature of the size of our state and the size of our communities spread out. It's because where water exists in one place and people live in another place are the kinds of things that cause us some of these issues. Transportation, water, and so on. But we tend to seem to get it mostly worked out, and I think we get it right more than we get it wrong in trying to work together on it. We started off fairly slow, slower than I would like to have seen it, slower than what I think it could have been, should have been, but they didn't put me in charge of the schedule. They don't put me in charge of anything. But we are moving along. For those that worry about us moving slow, we actually cannot even hear a bill for the first 60 days. And so what we would have been doing otherwise mostly are the social kinds of things of recognizing groups and so on to come down to visit the Capitol and doing resolutions and things like that. We're not having been voted on anything by now. And so with an abundance of caution, they decided to do things to minimize people coming into the Capitol. But I do expect next week that we will start up this session on some really interesting committees. A new one that I have not been on before that I want to get on, and some of you know what I've been doing with terms of the COVID and trying to get the truth out and what can be done. And I've got a handout for each of you here that was put out by the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons on therapeutics that are out there for preventative and early intervention treatment. Things you can go to the drugstore today and buy over the counter that these doctors have demonstrated will reduce the impact of the COVID. It may not totally prevent you from getting it, but you won't get as sick with it. And I bet for these doctors, I'm talking about thousands of people, thousands. And had we adopted these policies, and it's unfortunate that we got from Washington what we did, had we adopted these policies of doctors being allowed to administer these on this, 90% of the people that have died would not have died. Because we have absolute data from other countries that allow the use of these drugs. Their death rate is somewhere between 5 and 10% of what we've experienced here in America. And so while I did manage to stop the pharmacy board from prohibiting some of these drugs that they tried to get between the doctors and the patients, some doctors who were being forward about prescribing them, the pharmacy board tried to stop it. I got them to withdraw their order doing that. And then when the medical board started going after doctors that were using drugs off-label, and those who don't know that, off-label use of drugs has been around since the beginning of drugs. Doctors treat the symptoms of the patient, and so while it may have been developed for one problem, they find it's effective in using it for another, so it's a common practice. Medical board was going after these doctors, and I got them to rescind that. And so we've got a lot of people living here in Texas because we have some very courageous doctors doing this. A number of people have asked me about, who know about this, have asked me, what if my doctor won't prescribe one of these drugs for me? What should I do? Right now I say two things. One, find another doctor, and then report that doctor to the medical board for malpractice. Because their refusal to do this right now is indeed, in my opinion, malpractice. And that's all I'm giving you is my opinion. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm not suggesting anything, but it's time to end this thing, and we can do it. So I'm on Health and Human Services, and I can't wait till we start having hearings and bring in Health and Human Services to query them on why they refuse to do what should have been done and could have been done to at least inform the people of Texas that if you boost your immune system, you're less likely to get the disease and get sick. And that's a simple truth of the bottom line of what could have been done. I asked them to do that early on. They laughed at me and refused to do it. And I can't wait to have that hearing in Health and Human Services. I'm also on education. I've been on education the previous session, and we've got a lot of issues to address. We have education in Texas. We've got to make some changes. We've got to move the focus in Texas off of the institution of education and into the classroom on the students and the teachers, on achievements. I got to report just a couple weeks ago on last year's performance, and it's not that much different than the previous years for Senate District 2. The two key things are where is the student in the third grade and where do they graduate. Third grade students in Senate District 2, we have 34% of them are reading on grade level. 34%. That's pretty close to the statewide average. Think about that. 1 in 3. And actually, if a child cannot read in the third grade, they're going to have a real hard time learning after that. Seniors graduating, those that are college ready, and that's what people go through high school for, is to get ready for college. Hang on. You're not going to believe this. You have to see it yourself. 8%. 8% of our high school graduates in Senate District 2 are college ready. That to me, it should be considered unacceptable. And this is happening because we keep focusing. We have not focused on outcomes. We have focused on putting more money into the system with no real accountability for improving outcomes. We haven't had an increase in performance in our schools in almost 20 years. It's a very flat line, but the amount of money has gone up fairly steeply. We've got to reassess how we're doing it, and maybe what happened with COVID will give us the opportunity to do that. The other is I'm on a new committee called Local Government. This is a committee that really handles things that are specific to a community. But I'm also again on state affairs, and I'm really happy about that because state affairs, more bills go through state affairs and all the rest of committees go together. There will be election integrity, we'll go through that. We will have a number of, I'm not done time-wise.
No,
Hey,
they're telling me to turn the air conditioner on.
Oh. Oh, okay, well, because I started talking, and I just, I would get up here with a lot of stuff like this.
It's getting a little
anyway.
chilly in here.
I'm looking for Brian Hughes, our senator from our neighboring, community to the east of us, he's chairman of it. Brian and I have already, I'll be a joint author, I have the bill, that'll pass out on election integrity. We'll probably hear his bill, and I'll be a joint author with him on that. And one of the things we've done, I'll just jump back to this session, because of the way things are moving, instead of all of us filing bills and working to get our bill, where we have found common ground in things like pro-life bills, or ending the 10-day rule with the hospitals, or constitutional carry, or any of the other bills where somebody, like rolling back executive powers, a big thing we have to do here in Texas, to make sure that we never, ever again go through something where we have abandoned the principles of the people's government under a monarch that we have done. We can never do that again. We have a bill, and I will joint author that with my good friend Brian Birdwell from a little bit west of here. And so we will be going together on these things to get through the system, probably far fewer bills than we have in the past, but it will be what we hopefully will need to get done. And then the last one, I'm on Veterans Affairs. I've been on that every session I've been down there, and will be vice chair. And there are a number of things we're working on for our veterans down there. It's a very rewarding committee to be on, because our veterans, we owe an awful lot to them. But how many veterans do we have here? Can you stand up? So with that, let me, I would like to come back and talk to you when we get to election integrity.
Yeah, we're gonna have
quite a bit on that, and I can tell you, give you a quick summary of what really happened with our power, with our grid system. Anyway, thank you for being here, and just let me wrap it up by saying what Jerry said about next week's meeting in Rockwall is, and what Troy is doing. The reason he came back here, because he has dedicated himself to rebuilding the voting population. We are in this mess because the vast majority of Americans have abdicated their responsibility to participate in the election process. Now, I know this last week is very discouraging, but that's no excuse. We're up there because too many people sit home, they wait until they get ready to run down to the poll to vote, and they call somebody and say, who should I vote for? Who should I vote for? Folks, that's not the way you need to do it. We need to start doing our homework, vetting the candidates, know what they stand for, and then when you elect them, it just starts. You watch what they're doing. You look how they vote, what they say, what they do, and then you kick in term limits. We've got term limits built into the system. It's called the next election. When they aren't doing what you thought they were going to do, then you find somebody else to take their place. That's how we make this thing work. And when you start doing that, we won't go through too many elections before you'll have people who will stand up here, tell you what they're going to do, and they know good and well they better go do it, or they're going to be out of here. And until that fear is put on, because the people show up, pay attention to what they're doing, and follow through, you're going to still get what we got. Yep. Every person that's in office today was put there by everybody. Either you didn't vote, or there weren't enough that voted. But the government we have in D.C. that's given us this gosh awful 1.9 trillion. I can't even imagine that amount of money and how it's being spent. Can you imagine the other side? If Trump had tried that, they would have crucified him, absolutely crucified him. We are destroying our children's lives with that kind of thing. But I better get off that subject. Folks, get involved. Show up this meeting. Show up at your Republican meeting. We need to have standing room only. Yeah. Graves is not a big county. I would ask you to each of you leave here today making a promise that you will show up at the next Republican meeting and bring at least 2 people with you. And we can do this. We can keep our country on a constitutional conservative path that our founding fathers intended for it to be, only so long as it is a government of the people, by the people, doing their job. and getting people out to run for all offices, all level. And let me close with saying, the single most important elected position in our state is school board. And we have a mess in our schools because our school boards have failed to do their job. And thank you, I'm gonna shut up.
Thank you, Senator Hall. And yeah, just to go off some of this, something he just said, know who, and what Jerry said, know who you're voting for. Just because somebody files as a Republican to run does not mean they're a Republican. Meet with them, ask them, what do they think about the Second Amendment? What do they think about abortion? What are their thoughts on fiscal responsibility? You know, ask them these things, because people, especially in conservative counties, will file as Republicans when they're not really Republicans. And you need to find out what if they think the way you do, and if you really want to vote for them.
Right.
You know, because if you think that abortion should be legal, you're not a Republican. If you think that the government should pay your way, you're not a Republican. Okay? So thank you for making those points. You know, vet your interview. These are job interviews. Interview these people. You know, you're hiring them for a job. So even though these guys work for free, you're still hiring them for a job. Cole Hefner, thank you for being here. It's your turn. Cole is, you're in your third term, right? Yes. He is career politician. No, he's a career insurance agent. Cole has been real active in Rains County. Every time we call him and we ask him to come, he comes. So does Senator Hall, and we appreciate that.
You did.
Oh, you, thanks.
Thank you. Nick is one of the first people I met in Rains County, and Judge Wolf. Well, thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for doing this, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. I love coming to Rains County. Me and my wife, Carrie, who's with me here in the back by Miss Hall, we did a little run this morning, went over and got some Pittsburgh hot links, and then just kind of enjoyed our drive over here. So if I'm not off, y'all know that I'm full of about maybe 14 or 15 hot links. I don't know why. It was embarrassing. But we have 7 kids back home, 4 boys and 3 girls. And don't worry, we poured some Cheerios out on the floor so they can survive. Hopefully the house is still standing, not on fire when we get back. But no, they're good kids. But I represent 6 counties down in Austin: Kent, Morris, Titus County, Wood, and Rains County, and then a part of Smith County. So me and Senator Hall share Rains County, and then myself and Senator Hughes have the other 5 counties. I want to back up a little bit, and I want to talk about what Judge Wolf talked about, and I'm so thankful for people like Judge Wolf in elected office, a Baptist preacher that's not ashamed to go out and talk about Jesus and be a good witness in politics. You know, a lot of politics is an ugly place to be right now. It's not pretty. It's not fun. It's ugly. And we need to be doing the right thing. We need to be fighting the right battles. But we need to maintain our witness in doing the right thing the right way. And we don't need to lose that focus as we're going through this process. And that's easy to do. It's easy to put on a show in Austin and Washington. It's easy to fake it. It's easy to type up a tweet or a Facebook post and to do something different behind the scenes. And we need to make sure that we as elected officials are the real deal and maintaining that witness and integrity through the process. So thankful for people like Judge Wolf that do that every day. We don't always agree on issues, but we're honest and upfront, and we agree on the end goal. And sometimes it's just the route that we get there that we differ on a little bit. I want y'all to be encouraged. I know we were discouraged and disappointed in our presidential election in 2020. But if you look across the state of Texas, we held every statewide office that was up. We held our 83 seats in the state house. We actually improved our state house. We had some moderate to liberal Republicans that were replaced with more conservative. We lost a Republican, sort of. Kirkman Davis really wasn't a Republican, but she's thrown that part. And so we lost Sarah Davis in Houston, but we gained Mike Schofield in Houston. Mike Schofield is a good, solid conservative. In fact, he worked for State Senator Fallon in the state Senate last session when he was out of the House, and now he's back in the House. We went down and knocked on doors for him and gave him money to try to make sure he came back. So we had a good night across the state of Texas. They threw $60 million at just the state house races, just a handful of state house races. The Democrats came with $60 million. And so we were able to push that off. Legislatures across the state, we gained Republican seats. In the U.S. House, we gained, what, a dozen-ish? So, and that's kind of rare, in the off year. I think we'll probably take the House in 2022, hopefully. And so, stay engaged. If we quit, it's all over. And so we've got to stay in the fight. And so just be encouraged that while there is fraud, there are problems with our elections, we've got to stay in the fight no matter what. So this session's my third. We serve on 3 committees. Every state rep gets to serve on at least 2 committees. Some serve on 3, some serve on 4. I'm on 3 committees. I serve on the Calendars Committee. There's 7 Republicans and 4 Democrats on the Calendars Committee. It is the most conservative Calendars Committee I have ever even heard of in the Texas House. It's a very young committee. There's only 2 Republicans senior to me on that committee. Representative Craddock, who's been in the House since 1969, and that's a long time before I was even born. And then Representative Burrows is 1 term ahead of me. He's the chairman of the committee. And then there's myself and then some junior members. So, but good, solid conservatives on that committee. I'm vice chairman of the Business and Industry Committee. They handle workman's comp and union issues and all kinds of construction stuff on there, everyday business stuff. And then I serve on the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee, which a lot of our gun bills will go through. And so we're a little bit behind where we were last session. We're not as far behind as it feels like. Even to me, Senator Hall was talking about being frustrated where we're on the process. Man, I'm hearing some grumblings from my colleagues. I'm passing that up to leadership. I'm like, guys, we're getting nervous. We're ready to get going. But we did look at where we were this time last session. We're probably a week or 10 days behind, mostly due to the ice storm. But it is frustrating. But don't think too. This is something I want to say. I've seen some emails and stuff go out about how many minutes the House has been on the floor. Let me tell y'all something. The floor work is about 5% of the work. 95% of the work is done months leading up to the session, the first part of session. We're still waiting to get bills back from draft. They're in Legislative Council getting the language right. We haven't even filed all of our bills yet. So don't buy into that. We're not doing anything because we're not on the floor. Because at the floor, by the time the bill gets to the floor, it's probably going to pass. It's been worked through the process. We knock a few down on the floor, but most of them, by the time they make it through the process, pass on the floor. So the work is being done now. It's being done when we're not on the floor. And so, make no mistake, we're working hard. Where was I going to go? I had a thought there, and it just went, some rabbit went across a squirrel or something. So there's that. We're about a week or 10 days behind. We're going to have our committees. We'll form and organize next week, and we'll start hearing bills in committee the week after. We'll start voting bills out the week after that. The first calendar we had bills on the floor last session was March the 19th. I'm hoping we hit that pretty close, but we could be a few days after that. So guard your wallets, guard your freedom. The legislature's in session. So when we're there, perk up, pay attention, because not always good things happen. Keep in mind too, we're just normal folks. I've heard people say that we don't get paid. That's not exactly true. We get paid a little. I get paid $20 a day, whether I show up or not, and before taxes. So we get $600 a month. House and Senate members get the same. Speaker of the House gets the same. The Lieutenant Governor even gets $600 a month, unless the governor's out of town, then he gets $500 a day. But anyway, so we are citizen part-time legislatures. I'm thankful for that. We're one of only a couple of big states that have part-time legislatures, and that's a good thing. We don't need to be down there dreaming up garbage to do all the time. And so it makes us go back home. It makes us live under the laws we created, and help keeps us in check. And so it's a frustrating, ugly, nasty process. And it's the worst one in the world, except for all the rest of them. All the rest of them are worse. So we have the best process. So stay engaged. We have filed a few bills. Some of them are directly related to the Republican priorities. Some of them are not. There are more important things. There are not more important things, but there are more issues that are also important. And so we're filing bills that affect those. And then if we're not filing those bills, specifically ourselves, we're helping other people with their bills. So we don't have to file every bill, like Senator Hall was saying. He's working with Senator Hughes in the Senate on a far-reaching, comprehensive election integrity bill. My good friend Briscoe Kane in the House side We came into the House together. He's been ranked the #1 most conservative. I'm the #7, so I guess I'm getting a little soft. But he was appointed chairman of the Elections Committee in the House this time, so he's got the elections bill in the House, and we're excited about what we're hearing. He offices on my hall. He has a bunch of kids like me. He thinks he's a big shot with 5 kids, but one of these days maybe he'll get to where we are. No, he's done, didn't he? They're done. Yeah, they've got 5 boys. I don't know how they just, man, boy. But we office on the same hall. He and I are really close and excited what I'm hearing about the things that are going to be in that bill. We filed a bill. It's a pretty simple concept on election integrity. Why in the world are we using election equipment made in countries that hate us? Anybody know that? So I'm at a meeting with Congressman Gohmert one day, and he makes a comment about some election equipment being made in Canada or Spain or somewhere, and I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. So we filed House Bill 1314 that said the election equipment, all components, software, hardware, everything needs to be made in the United States. And so we kind of like a no-duh moment, and we have filed that as a pretty aggressive, pretty strong bill. We may have to give our counties and governmental entities some time to replace their equipment with American-made equipment. But anyway, we started off with a strong bill, and we're going to work it through the process. Hopefully get that thing either passed or amended onto another bill. But that just seemed like a common sense election integrity issue to me, is why aren't we making these equipment in America? Pro-life bill, I'm confident that we're going to probably move the heartbeat bill. Representative Kane had the heartbeat bill last session. Got a lot of co-authors, got a lot of talk, couldn't quite get the traction. Representative Kane and Senator Brian Hughes have been working on a heartbeat bill for a long time that we believe will be a vital vehicle to the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. I believe it's going to be handed off to a freshman female in the House, to carry it in the House, Shelby Slauson. They announced the other day that she'll be carrying the heartbeat bill. She's a great conservative member out of Stephenville. She replaced a moderate Republican, and so we're excited about what she's going to be doing. And I think I've already co-authored that bill. I can't remember bill numbers and all that stuff. I was doing a TV interview yesterday, and they said, "What about your House Bill 18?" Whatever they said, and I was like, "Oh no." I couldn't remember the numbers, and so there's a lot of numbers out there, but you got to give them what the bill does. Oh yeah, then it'll come back to me. We filed a bill. We're calling it our Emergency Powers Bill, and basically it says that an executive, be the governor, a mayor, a county judge, cannot prohibit the sale of guns and ammunition in a natural disaster, in a declared disaster. You're going to see gun bills that go from, I had one last session, I had passed a bill in my first session that said public school employees could carry a firearm in their vehicle. Well, some people started telling them, their school started telling them, fine, you can carry that in your vehicle, but you have to separate the ammo and the magazine and all this bunch of dumb junk. And so I passed a little bill that said you can't tell them how to store it in their vehicle, as long as it's out of sight. So there'll be little bills like that, all the way up to constitutional carry and things in between. And so this bill just says an executive, a county judge, a mayor, or a governor can't prohibit the sale of guns and ammo during a declared disaster. Our governor didn't do that, but we don't know who the next governor's going to be. And our county judges didn't do that. Judge Wolf would never do that. But Judge Wolf may not always be the judge. And so we wanted to protect that going forward. It got a low bill number in the Senate. Senator Brandon Creighton from Conroe is carrying that. So it's a lieutenant governor's priority. We filed the bill in the House, and then I got a call from the Speaker's office asking if I wanted a special bill number. I think I filed it at 2249. It's now House Bill 1500. And so that usually gets me referred sooner, and it shows everybody that it's kind of a preferred bill. Shouldn't be a problem getting that passed. So anyway, is there anything else, Mama? Anything to tell me? She does. So, but we're encouraged to be working to pass some good stuff. Pray for us. Keep us in your prayers. It's hard, guys. I mean, like Senator Hall said, it's not a fun place to be. Be encouraged that there are people like Senator Hall, Senator Hughes, Congressman Fallon, Judge Wolf. There's a lot of good folks down there. But we have a very diverse state. Not all of our state believes like we do. And I've got a couple of Democrats that I think the world of. They're honest, they're straight shooters, they're good people. They're there because they believe in what they're doing. I think they're wrong, and I want to defeat them in those beliefs. But they're good, solid people. But they have a strong constituency that don't think like we do. We're 80% Republican over here. They're 80% Democrat. I talked to a freshman Democrat, and her district votes 80% Democrat. And so our state is just all over the place. But we're sent down there to fight. And like Senator Hall said, most of the issue are rural versus urban, or we had a bill last session. One of the coolest things I've seen. When you're on the House, we have a vote board. Have y'all seen it? It's got the board up on the wall, red and green lights. And as you're there a while and you're casting votes, you get used to what the board looks like on certain types of bills. You can look up there and see the green. Well, we had a bill that come through the committee I served on in my first session that said if you were arrested for a felony, that they would take your DNA and keep it. And the reason for that was these people go around the state committing, aggravated sexual assault or murder, and if they get that DNA and they catch them over here, they can link them up. So it's a really good tool for law enforcement. But being another Democrat, believe it or not, on that criminal jurisprudence committee, helped kill that bill in committee because we thought that was too much government, getting a little too close when they're keeping your DNA because you were arrested, not convicted, but arrested. And so we were like, oh no, we freaked out. Well, last session, I wasn't on the committee, and neither was Terry, so it passed. But when that bill was voted on, we had law enforcement officers that were on both sides of the bill. We had Terry Canales, the Democrat from down south, that was against it. His best friend was passionately for it. And when the vote lit up, it was bizarre. We had liberal Democrats against it. We had conservative Republicans for it. It was all over the place. But then we had those issues, our constitutional carry bills, our abortion bills, our gender modification bills. We're looking at filing one of those. Those bills are pretty bitterly partisan, but there's usually just a handful. We'll take a couple thousand record votes a session, and a handful will be party line partisan. But anyway, we've got some good folks down there. We need some more, but we got a lot of good folks. But anyway, thank y'all for having us. Obviously, we're working on. Somebody's got good taste. Good taste. I've got them all ever since. So the power problems we had. Most of my district didn't experience what a lot of the state did. I was talking to one of the Sestera plumbing guys back here who was out of power for 48 or 50 hours. Most of our district is outside of ERCOT. We're in the Southwest Power Pool, which goes, it's like Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, goes all the way up to the Canadian border. And so we didn't see quite the problems. I think Smith County is my part that's in the ERCOT. And so House and Senate had marathon hearings. A lot of interesting questions were asked. We watched a lot of those hearings, and I think some things are going to be done there. I think Senator Hall would share a caution with me. We don't want the government getting too deep off in there. A lot of what got us where we are is too much government. We've been subsidizing and propping up wind energy and solar, and we have created an unfair playing field for certain energy generators, which has caused more reliable, more dependable generators to go offline. And then, so bad policies, green energy, New Deal junk has helped get us here. Maybe some bad decisions were made getting us here. Obama era emissions control regulations helped get us here. Once you get one of those federal regulations in place, it is really hard to undo. President Trump undone a whole bunch of them, but a lot of them he couldn't get done. It's just that hard. The bureaucrats are deep. Senator Hall talked about term limits. I believe we have term limits. We got to run every 2, 4, or 6 years. If you're not careful and you term limit your elected representative out, you give those bureaucrats that are career bureaucrats even more power. They're the ones that have all the knowledge and all the know-how, all the history, and so be careful with kicking out your voice, and because it can empower the lobby and those bureaucrats that are always there even more and make it worse than it is. So anyway, looking forward to working on that, and I guess we'll take questions.
Thank you.
Y'all ready for now?
We're good.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. Appreciate it. He mentioned the gender modification. Who saw the Rand Paul where he was interviewing Dr. Levine this week. So, I was asking earlier, if this, then you're not a Republican. If you think a 10-year-old gets to pick their gender, my kids can't even go to the dentist to get their teeth cleaned without me signing off on it. But if you think a 10-year-old can pick their own gender, you're not a Republican. Kevin Sester, come on down. You're the proud owner of a blue.
I thought if I get to ask the first question.
We'll change that to a 4. And Jimmy Ballard, that you got the red one. All right. County Clerk Linda Wallace, do you want to come up and make any remarks?
Sure.
Okay.
She's also the elections administrator.
Yes, Linda oversees all the elections in the county. You know, how many terms have you been in office?
I'm Linda Wallace, I'm your county clerk and your administrator. I've been here 19 years, my third judge. I've handled elections since, in fact, my first year I had 5 elections. And all I've ever done is voted. I do have a new deputy election clerk here, Mrs. Heather Alton. I have 5 new employees out of 6. So it's a real concerning time for me. During this past election, and I know we're all worried about election security and integrity. Rain County's not. We do it right. I made a statement to my staff after Trump didn't win. Had I been over the United States election, he'd have won. Because I would make sure everybody was registered to vote, that voted. And we run our county right. We had some problems, we had a couple of hiccups, but you know, some of those you can't work around. You have to have your driver's license and your social security to get married in the state of Texas. You have to have your birth certificate to get a driver's license, but you don't have to have anything to register to vote. That's just not right. We need to know who they are that's registering to vote so we can get the voter ID when they come to vote. And that needs to be fixed. But in Rains County, I know most of the voters, and I don't know if y'all knew this, my election staff got COVID during the second week of early voting. No, 2 weeks prior to early voting. So I did it all by myself. I worked Saturday and Sunday and Monday through Monday. Stayed here until 9, 10 o'clock at night. But I didn't have anybody that could do it that my election staff. I'm cross-training now, they're all gonna learn how to do this. But I'm really out here just to answer your questions and see if I can answer your questions. But I want to take a moment to tell you that I met Debbie Nelson in 2005. She's a real good friend. They lived in Houston. She and her husband lived next to my son's in-laws when their kids were growing up. And so I met her then. After she moved here, which we were all so happy they were bought here and moved here, I asked her if she would be interested in being a Republican Party chair. We had just lost our Republican Party chair, and we needed somebody good. I have worked with the Democratic Party chair for years, and we worked great. I worked with the Republican Party chair for years. And then I got a new Democratic Party chair that didn't want me doing anything. And I knew I needed a good chair. And Debbie agreed to take that. So when she got ready to step down from that position, I asked Debbie if she knew Christy Ratliff. And I told her, I said, she'd be excellent to replace you. Christy came to me and said, why did you say that? And she's probably saying that now. So I work behind the scenes, but I'm a big Republican supporter. I just want y'all to know that. I have to work for the Democrat Party because I have to do their elections too. And it was a joy to work with Kate House for 15 of those years. And now she's not there. But anyway, have you got any questions? Have you got any questions, Bob? Or
We're gonna go. I just comment on what you said about Rains County. That's not where our problem in Texas is. I know our small towns, I've talked to many of our election folks in different counties, our problem is in the larger counties where things get lost within things, where they set up drive-by voting and they have 24-hour voting and they have drop boxes for mail-in ballots. The shenanigans that are being pulled in the big counties where nobody can see what's going on. It's not worried about our small
I knew you
counties.
wouldn't be, I knew you
No,
wouldn't be.
because-
And I want you to know, this is a great man. Cole Hefner answered a phone call for me while he was on the House floor. Because the county clerks got behind the bill. And they said, contact your senators and your House reps. And he called me from the House floor to listen to me. So our representatives down in Austin really do care about us. They listen to us, and if they don't vote our way, at least you've got to have your say. So I do want to say that. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you, Linda. You did
And
a
this
great
is
job.
from my election judges here. And I get out there and tell people, go sign up to help with elections. We struggle every election with getting enough workers, getting enough election judges, and it's a hard job to find enough. But we have some great ones.
And if you are interested, I'm your contact. You can with me. I have business cards up here on the table.
And you deputize voter registrants, right?
Yes. I am your voter registrar.
Yes.
I am your election administrator, and I'm your county clerk. I wear 3 hats. Well, I wear more. I'm also your court coordinator for county court. And I'm a commissioner ex officio.
I heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, that
I'm
the
really
state,
glad it came, so let me come back here so I can at least hear you.
so that in the state of Texas, early voting rates, people vote early, their votes are stored in another country, internally, until the day of election.
On our PCA, we have the state of Texas has just a guideline that we have to follow. And we have to go by email, and we have to get them registered if they're not registered. But it is a tough guideline to follow. And I have 15 at PCA. A lot of those are military, but a lot of those are working members of Texas working overseas. And so we have them. And we go by the guideline and we get it done. And they're counted. So
But that's true, they are stored in another country, the early votes.
Is there any way that can be manipulated?
pardon me?
Can that be manipulated?
No, that is being so hard to manipulate in that Teams is the Texas Electronic Administration Management System that's in Austin. And we are on Teams. And so only me and my staff are allowed on Teams. And we have to verify, check in every 15 minutes in my office. I can be working all day long. Every 15 minutes I got to pick up my phone and it's going to give me a code and I got to put in that code. So Texas has a great election. Well, the Secretary of State does a great job. And it's hard to manipulate. We had 2 problems this year. I can tell you what they are. We had one election judge got sick, and this was in early voting. She just had a horrible pain and got up to leave in the middle of checking a voter in. And the replacement went ahead and finished that voter. Well, neither one of them looked at her driver's license. And they checked the wrong person. And she voted. Well, she voted for her father-in-law. Her father-in-law has the same initials, and her father-in-law has the same name. The date of birth was way off, and I couldn't understand how it happened. But I had a way to go back in the state of Texas team system and look at who signed that. So I looked at who signed that, and then I called the voter that wasn't, he was out there trying to vote, and he said he'd already voted. Well, I knew him personally, and I said, if he said he didn't vote, he didn't vote, but let me go check this out. So I went, found that signature, I found out it was his daughter-in-law. And so we let him vote a provisional ballot. And I said, and I'm gonna talk to her now. And of course, I got a hold of her and told her what had happened, and she said, she apologized, but so did my election clerk. She cried for days. And know, it's just a thing that happened. Those kind of mistakes are forgivable. He got the vote, it got counted, and I wasn't in charge of that. A provisional vote doesn't go to me to okay, it goes to a ballot board. And so it got counted, and the daughter-in-law, she voted, and she was registered here. So it all turned out okay, but that's the kind of snafus we had. The other problem we had was the girl moved to Silver Springs, but she voted here because she was registered here. And when she registered, we had no choice to let her vote. But it came back. We got a green card 2 weeks after the election, and she had moved 2 months before the election. So that kind of thing you can't fix. That just happened.
But you do have confidence in the machinery. I mean,
We have hard,
all this
very,
computer stuff
we
that
have
we've
brand
seen
new
throughout
machines.
this election, the machines that they can hack into, they say, well, we're not online, and they prove they are online.
They are not online.
So, I mean, where I have a big problem is with this election stuff is what's being done that we don't even know anything about. And who's sitting in a closet somewhere on a computer that's got a degree in hacking, who can hack into a machine and can flip votes one way or the other. I mean, that's kind of stuff, I don't know if anybody can ever get rid of it.
Well, our machines are not online, so you cannot hack them. They are in my office, they're always locked, and during voting, they are with the election judges. She goes and gets it, and she brings it back. And
Madam
they're
Clerk,
locked. I'm the only one that can get in there and get the votes out.
And
I'm
they're
the only
tested
one
before
that
the
does that.
election. Don't
Right.
test them.
We test
Don't
them.
run tests.
And we have a testing published in the paper. Come help us test. Never have we had one person show up.
Here's what I want to do real quick, before we, because we're already kind of going into our first open forum, which was election integrity. If we can get Senator Hall, Representative Hefner, and County Clerk Linda Wallace, if y'all would all sit up here so that we can have an open dialogue. You've got 2 state lawmakers, your county clerk, so you can, let's just have about a 20-minute dialogue about election integrity. And then we're gonna have, and then the next one is the electricity crisis, that happened a week and a half ago. And then after that, we're gonna have a Q&A, some questions and answers, so, yeah.
When you ask a question, if you could come up so that we can hear it, because like Linda said, she has a little bit of a hearing problem. Don't stand back there and holler at it. If you could move forward so we can hear your question, please.
So yeah, let's just continue. I didn't mean to cut you off, Debbie, or anybody, or whoever, somebody over here had their hand up. But yeah, if y'all want to just now let's just have a dialogue. That's kind of what a town hall meeting is designed for. And, but let's be respectful, and let's give each other an opportunity to speak, so.
You gotta get up, sir.
Can you hear me? I noticed when I was voted in early, a driver's license had to show my driver's license, okay? Is that standard here, is that standard throughout the state? And if not, is there any legislation that's going to require picture ID for a driver's license? And another side question is, can we outlaw mail-in ballots in Texas? That's my 2 little questions.
That is state law, that you have to show me your ID.
But is that forced off, is that a standard, or is that
I only know that it
no
is.
notifications to where?
We apply that here in Texas, in
Okay.
Rains County.
Okay, but that's not being all over the state.
It should be, it's state law.
I mean,
They're gonna answer it.
sorry,
So
my fault.
we have made more than one attempt at the legislature to have a strict voter ID law. We and Senator helped me with this one, but we have one, but it's not what it should be. So if you show up and you don't have an ID, you can vote provisional, and then there were some details on when that provisional would or would not be counted. So, go ahead. We're not where we should be, but we have.
The problem we have to operate within the framework defined by the federal government. And the federal government has defined a very broad scope of what constitutes an ID for someone to vote, and they look at it as any attempt to tighten up identification is voter suppression. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm trying to explain. But they look at it as voter suppression, that there should be no barrier. I'm going to tell you, there are states and there are people pushing to have no ID required for voting. And so we have got a big fight on our hands. Texas we're kind of in between. We got the state of Oregon, there's 100% mail-in ballots. They don't even have go to the polling place. But basically what we do in Texas is governed by court cases that have ruled what can be done. I mean, we got it where you can verify with utility bills of where you are, where you're living in there, and things like that. So we do our best, and the challenge we're going to have this session with what we're doing in restructuring is to walk that tight line to protecting the integrity of the ballot without moving into voter suppression. And that's their biggest fight, is they want to tag anything you do that makes the election more secure is being a move to keep some group of people from voting.
And keep in mind, we have some states, they don't even have serial numbers on their ballots. They have same-day online voter registration and things that are just wild that are, but, so we can do better for that.
I think that
So, Linda, this one is for you, and I think I know the answer to this, because I've heard a lot of that from Facebook, et cetera, about voter integrity in changing something from an internet connection. The voting locations we have, I think I can only say 2 locations possibly have internet connection. Did they possibly change that?
Possibly Rose, Mott, and, of course, here.
Right.
But most of our polls do not,
Internet, right?
no, do not have
You mean
internet
internet service to the building?
to the building.
The building
Okay.
itself. And so I'm thinking that
3 of ours are in a cell hole. No one has any cell at all, no Wi-Fi.
okay, I just kind of want to make that known because that is some type of safety net. I think that it couldn't count.
Yes?
Oh.
Bob, look,
Hang on, Bob.
Get around your side. Well, I want to thank our congressman and our senator for being here with us today. It's always a pleasure to see them, and also our leaders in the party here. I have 5 bullets, or 4 bullets I'd like to present.
They're not in a gun, are they?
It's not loaded.
Okay.
But Senator Hall is no longer Senator Hall. You can call him "I told you so" Hall. He's been talking about that grid, and I told you so 7 years ago, we were going to have problems. And now you see what happens when the Congress, the state Congress, and the state legislatures don't pay attention to what our representatives are telling us. We appreciate that. And our good friend from Mount Pleasant, my cousin Pat Sisk is over there.
Good man, yes, sir.
And I go to see you, but you're always busy in Austin. So that's good. But it's kind of hard to sit here with the senator behind me, because every time they look at me, I think he's a preacher. What did I do wrong, you know? So, at any rate, voter fraud is one of the things I wanted to address. And in the state of Texas, it's your responsibility to come up with, pass the laws that apply to the state and how we run it. But what we need is a federal law that is standard throughout the 50 states. We don't need every state making their own rules. And you see what happened this last time? There was voter fraud. I'm going to give you one example, then I'll go to my next one. Lyndon Johnson in 1940, I'm old enough to be there, at 87. In 1948, Lyndon Johnson landed in my backyard in a whirlybird called a helicopter. We called it a whirlybird back then. And in a football field, and I went out at age 14 or 15, going on 15, and gave a little speech. And he was elected senator. Well, down in Webb County in Alice, Coke Stevenson was running against him, and Coke had the lead like Trump did. But all of a sudden at night comes in another box. It's got 200 votes in it. Now, how did they get 200 votes? One is, in Alice, Texas, precinct number 13, the tally sheet had 763 votes in the tally sheet. And somehow that 7 was turned into a 9. That was 200 votes difference. And Lyndon Johnson won by 87. So they went looking for how did that happen. Well, there were some tombstone names on it for people who left the state, left the county. So we need, at the federal level, standards that's throughout. One state allows felons to vote, and other states don't. every time we allow these things to go on, it affects the electoral college too. If you let 2,000 felons vote, that means that, they're going to have an upper hand on the electoral college. Speaking of the electoral college, everything Trump did on electoral college was in called checks and balances. When we have an election right over here with Linda, the commissioner's court, the judge, and the commissioner's court, they get together and they validate the election as being true. You go to Texas, you go down to Austin, they validate. The checks and balances system at the state, at the national level, is no more than the same thing we do here. We just validate the elections. So we need some immigration. I won't say anything on that. We all know what the problem is. If you voted for open borders, I don't like you. You're on my list. Well, too bad Georgia voted. They eliminated the checks and balances program so that we could go a socialist nation. Too bad for them. Let me touch on something that I'll ask now that you're up here, I'll ask you. I've always had a problem, personal problem, I don't know about you all, but we elect every 2 years to the state and to the national Congress, a senator or a congressman for 2 years. Well, in 2 years, he doesn't have time really to find out where the WC is, much less carry on any business. So he gets broke in and find out what's happening. So I'm suggesting, and this is beyond my capabilities and their capabilities, but I would like to see a 3-year term rather than a 2-year term. Give them a chance to go to the office, go in, and find out what your job is, how you're going to do it, and follow through with your bills. I would urge that a change be made to 3 years, and besides, I'm tired of getting windows in the mail every year on election, blowing money for me. It costs us a lot of money, and Linda can tell you that running elections are expensive. So we need to take some new avenues of how we're going to conduct business at the state and at the national. And my last comment is just another bullet. 1933, FDR got the Congress to go and eliminate the dollar on the U.S. dollar in gold in favor of the dollar. Early in life, in 1933, let me rephrase that, gold was the standard, and they had a balanced budget. Well, we haven't had a balanced budget at the level of Washington since 1933. And nothing changed from 1975. Couldn't even buy gold until 75. But we need to go back on a budget. We need to go back on the gold standard. And it just keeps people in Washington from just going out and borrowing money from all over the world to do their special programs. I appreciate you letting me interrupt you there, but.
And I'll tell you, you made a point there about the 2-year terms, and I will tell you all, I'm how long I've been there? 4 years. I'm in there my 5th year, and so I'm still finding bathrooms. And I'll give you an example of what he's talking about. And so my 2nd term, I served on the Appropriations Committee. I asked for that committee because I thought, man, if I can get in where the money goes, I can really affect state government. But what I found when I got there was that the budget had already been prepared by the Legislative Budget Board, which is a whole bunch of people that sit in some cubicles somewhere in those buildings around the Capitol, and good folks, good hardworking folks, but they don't answer to you, they don't really answer to us. And so I'm sitting there as my 1st term. We had a new speaker, I was new on the committee, and so this budget had been worked on for 6 or 8 months leading up to the session. And I keep waiting for us to drill into the budget. I'm ready to drill into the budget. We never did drill into the budget. I did a little bit on some pro-life stuff in Article 2 subcommittee that nobody will ever hear about. It's off the record. I got some bad stuff knocked off. And when we had some extra money, I got to kind of decide where some of that went, sort of. And so that's an example of your voice not being as strong as it should be in the legislative process. If I'm not seeing what's going on in the budget, you're not seeing what's going on in the budget. You're not represented in that budget like you should be. Myself and Representative Schaefer were on appropriations, and we were griping and complaining to each other and to people that are senior to us. And this session, we were able to tweak that process a little bit in the rules to get some more member eyes in that budget. That's a perfect example, Judge, of we need a little time to get in there and find out how this process works. There's what do you call it, Robert's Rules of Order and the rules of the House and how debate is done and committees and it's just a whole bunch of mechanics really designed to make it hard to pass a bill. And we want it to be hard to pass a bill. We don't need to be passing bills through there fast because you get a whole bunch of junk put in your lap. And so it takes a little time to learn that stuff, but that was a perfect example of what would empower the bureaucrat if you get rid of your elected representative too often. So anyway.
Yeah.
If y'all have any complaints, here's the complaint form. Yeah, and here's the form on what all we're doing good, so.
Bob, love you to death, but I'm gonna have to disagree with you on the federal government taking control of our elections. It's the Constitution puts it at the state level. We already have too much federal government in our elections. And if you doubt that, you need to read, I think it's H.R. 1 is now going through the Congress up there that totally, absolutely decimates any kind of concept of election integrity and what they have laid out in the process of basically no citizen verification. I mean, we cannot, I'm a states' rights federalist kind of person, and thinking about the federal government solving problems that other states have sounds good if they would do it, but more times they screw it up for everybody. And I would like to have the federal government stay out of it. We can't control what other states do. We're going to have to depend on them to do it, and I don't think the federal government could ever straighten them out.
My suggestion would be, it would take me a constitutional amendment to do what I suggest.
Right. No, and I think we need to keep it here in Texas. Remember, the states created the federal government, and the states created the counties and cities. And so Texas as a state needs to clean up its election process, and we're doing that. I've got a handout up here of several pages of what's being put in, a suggestion on what we need to do it. But this is what we need to fix here, right here in Texas for us, and then let the other states take care of themselves.
But how can
Excuse me.
Let's
That's
go
again.
back there, huh?
I wanted to echo what Judge Wolf mentioned a while ago, that he's hearing from his constituents in this county and surrounding counties that these people's vote don't mean anything anymore. I realize that when we vote, we have to show an ID in Texas, and that's great. That's a fundamental deal. But my concern is when the votes are tallied in each county and sent to the state, we're dealing with cybersecurity. This is a whole new thing that is in question right now. And this is what people are hearing, and I have a large veteran community that I'm engaged with in Wood County. And if people don't have the fundamental, we don't have the hearts and the souls and the minds of the people that their vote counts. We need some way, somebody, some politician, somebody to stand up and say, look, this cybersecurity situation, your vote, when it goes to the state, and then it goes on to up to the next level, that is protected. Right now, I think there's a big question mark, this gentleman here brought it up too, that the cybersecurity end of it is what the big concern is, and I think that is what we saw with our last vote for president.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It is a concern, is what we've moved into this age of technology we have, that we have some very vulnerable systems out there, and we definitely have to fix them. It's more prevalent in our bigger counties, in which they have, because of the confusion that will go on with so many people around and moving things around. I can tell you stories, and I don't want to take up the whole time of what took place right along the line of what you're talking about. In Dallas County, we have witnesses and affidavits that were filled out where they took the memory card in a smaller, like Rains County, you're not going to likely have this problem, but those memory cards were being intercepted between the precinct and Central County, downloaded and reloaded. And we know that for a fact because when they showed up at Central County, the bag that they were in that had the precinct name on it, when they took the card out and loaded it into the computer, it had a different precinct on the data that was on the card. And that happened several times. And so what's being speculated was that in the rush of doing this with the cards in another location, they put the cards back into the wrong container and then sent it over to the Central County.
Sir, I would submit to you that it's not just a Texas problem or a
Right.
United States problem. I think it's a worldwide problem. I think that other countries have got access into the cyber security and to our being able to get into our system.
Absolutely right. And you will see, and I will hand out the list of what we have. You will see that's being addressed from multiple directions. And what my office and several of those I'm working with are recognizing need to be changed in the system. So we have more transparency and more accountability, more oversight in what's happening. And one of the things that would help, and I'll get back to our people, is we don't have enough poll watchers. We don't have enough people showing up just to make sure that things are being done right. And we have a system that allows folks who don't want to do things right to thwart the efforts of the poll watchers when they show up. Now, things that would never happen here, like in Dallas County, where they say you got to be in the same room. Well, Dallas County said that's fine, to be in the same room. They set them in chairs with a petition between them and the people counting the votes so they couldn't even see. We've got some problems like that that need to be fixed. But transparency and accountability and more in the chain of custody of things. I mean, I would be up here all day long at the night on what you'll see, and I'll give you the list of what we've sent over to Ledge Council to go into the changes that are made. But it has to do more with, as votes moving through the system, that there's a verification that there's no change made, a physical verification that things are being changed.
I'll tell you something that I filed bills on before, and I think there's a good chance it gets worked into the election omnibus bill that's being worked on currently. Something as simple as a paper backup. When that vote is cast at the precinct, there is some sort of physical evidence that can be referred back to if something's tampered with. People have different opinions on paper backup ballots. I'm a strong proponent of something that I can refer back to if the system is tampered with or if it goes down. I can go through there and go, one vote for Bob Hall, one vote for Colton. I can just count them out. And so something that simple is something we're working on as well.
Well, we only got 2 years to bring people back over into a mindset that I'm going to get out and vote.
I understand. I think one of our biggest challenges is this legislature, to me, fixing election integrity is more important than our budget.
Some of that is the system itself. I can print every ballot out.
And when you send your tabulations to the Secretary of State, I mean, you're keeping a record also.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you're not just gonna release that into the system.
Well, I mean, there's
Right.
3 different ways we get it to the state before canvass.
Right.
And then the canvass, and then we enter the information from the canvass.
And the canvas is a check. You check it, the canvas checks it, right.
But if I have a problem at all, I can print every ballot.
Okay.
And that's the HART system.
Right, because some machines are set up that way,
ES&S
some are
probably
not. but
can't
yeah.
do that,
Right.
but we can.
Now, that's part of what we're gonna have to tighten up on our specifications on what the machines can do and cannot do. And one of it is that, we talked about the internet. We're talking about machines that not just are not connected to the internet, but machines that are neither internet capable or Wi-Fi capable, basically, so that the hackers, and having worked in cybersecurity previously, I know that there are ways to get at most anything, but there's also ways to shield it. And so we have to have machines that are not just not connected, but aren't even capable of being accessed. And there are machines out there. There are companies that make those. They've recognized that as a need. Matter of fact, it's probably going to be in the new federal guidelines that the equipment is not even internet or Bluetooth capable.
I have absolute confidence in what we're doing in Orange County. I'm completely confident about our elections. But after that, I don't have confidence. And so I'm wondering, what can we do to ensure that other states follow their own election laws and their own election rules. This is a problem.
Well, and that's one of the challenges we face. The Constitution, in plain language, puts the election process in the hands of the states, individual states. And so it says that a person will be, the Constitution says they have this, this length of terms and how long they have to live in the district and citizens, residency requirements. But how the election is conducted it's clear in the U.S. Constitution that it is a state's responsibility. And so that's
I fully
yeah.
understand
So we're limited
that.
in what we can do, obviously, with Arkansas, Louisiana, or Pennsylvania, but, right.
We've got our hands full just fixing Texas.
But what,
Yeah.
as voters, and you all have talked about
There's,
it,
I can't speak on behalf of the congressman, but I will tell you just in conversations, this is where don't stop voting comes into play. Because if you stop voting, then you're saying,
Really
as a
is.
people, you're saying, well, we've surrendered then, we have no power, you do what you want. What is happening right now at the Capitol, with it being completely fenced off, no visitors, votes being at 2 and 1 o'clock in the 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, is the Democratic Party saying we're gonna do what we want. And so what can be done, we have got to continue go to the polls. The states, absolutely, I agree with you, Senator Hall, it's states' rights. The states are responsible for doing what they're doing, and it all starts from the level of Linda, right? No.
We have a program. United States as a
Yeah.
whole
And-
has a program called ERIC.
Yeah.
Texas is in ERIC,
Yeah.
but we can't make any other state. And
Right.
it's not a Texas.
But this is what I'm
program.
saying, it's at the local level. So at the local level, they're doing what they're supposed to. If each county took the responsibility that's happening here in Rains, and then each representative helped and went and held arms with them, saying, we're gonna continue, and then the senators continue. But how does that happen? You have to have the representation in your local levels and in your state levels to do what they're supposed to be doing. If you stop voting, you take that away.
And like the senator said, we have our hands full in Texas. We still have, to me, and Ms. Wallace tell me this, mail-in ballots are easier to manipulate than voting in person, quite a bit easier. I mean, you got somebody out there that can be certified as somebody that can assist others in their mail-in ballots. And if there's not the proper checks and checks and balances in that process, you can just fill out ballots and mail them in. And so the mail-in ballot system is where it's a whole lot easier
Well, it's not
to
quite
commit
that
that
easy.
fraud.
I mean, it's not that easy at all in Rains County, because we have a signature verification committee. They have to
Right.
sign an application, and it has to match exactly the envelope coming back.
Right.
And if there's an oath on it, assistant, their applicant, their signature has to match.
You know, we have people in Gray County, we have 3 or 4 people that were indicted in the Democrat primary, where there was 200 and something verified cases, affidavits sworn for voter mail-in fraud over there. And that was in the Democrat primary. 2 candidates were running in a runoff, and some funky stuff went on. But like I said, when you have good people in place, that's one of the keys. Like I said, election workers, election judges, it is so hard to get people to do that. It pays a little, but everybody's got lives, they got families, they have jobs. But it is important to have the right people in those polling places.
Anyway, it goes back to what Judge Wolf said, or what was said earlier here. We have moved away from honest Christians running things. If all men were angels, we wouldn't have to worry about that. The system we have, if it was run like you run here and everybody did their job honestly, we wouldn't have a problem. But what we have are people who are far less than honest, who are always looking to work the system, to beat the system in some way to do it. What you go through here in a good signature verification, I've got confirmation that in other counties, a line drawn, that's close enough. That's it, that works.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen here.
No.
But what we have is we don't, and this is a problem to be fixed truly at the county level, where you know each other, you work. Our bigger counties are gonna be harder to do it. But your focus here of making sure that you're participating, that you're showing up, and doing your part, the poll watchers, just help make people that are already, that intend to be honest, not to make mistakes. Because there are, I mentioned this earlier, our problem is not just fraud, it's just plain human error. And we had two elections that demonstrate that beautifully. 3-4 years ago down in Hill County, they ended up with almost 2,000 votes more than people that showed up to vote. It turned out to be human error. They ended up counting the early votes twice because they didn't clear the machine out. Clearly a mistake. Out in Midland area, with all the new equipment, with the paper ballots that were there, when they got through, they were short. I remember what the number was, 2,000, 4,000 votes, whatever, but they weren't accounted for. They had 2,000 more that had voted than they had total votes. And they couldn't figure out where the problem was, and it took about 2 weeks later, somebody comes carrying in this box and said, anybody know what's in this? And it turns out they put the ballots in the wrong box, put it in the wrong place, nothing untoward about it, just somebody making a human mistake. So our problems are in both sides of that because we have humans. I don't know about you guys, but I'm fallible. I'll make mistakes. If you don't believe me, ask my wife.
So, is Lanes County and Dallas County, are we using the same machines?
No.
No. No, we're moving towards that's one of the problems we have to fix. We have to fix.
Statewide,
Yes.
are we not using the same machines?
No, you're not even using the same machines, I don't think is what we're using in Danzig County. In there.
Hunt County, we have the same, and in Hopkins, we have the same.
Is that something we're working on?
Yes,
as
yes,
trying to
yes,
save?
we are moving towards paper backups and consistent systems. That's one thing, right now, in Texas, we have 254 counties, and we have 254 processes.
My county where I live, we don't have voting machines, we vote on paper. We have a machine that we split the paper ballot in, but we fill out a paper ballot. Entice.
We can prevent, in our county, in our city, the county elections, we have a machine too, like that, what you're talking about, it's like a Scantron. You fill out a paper ballot, you slam through the machine on your way out the door, it tabulates it right then, and it also grabs it and hangs on. At the end of the day, they unload
Little flag
the
that waves.
ballots, put them in a box at the back of it, and use the machine as we use the regular tally when it comes to Kansas.
Right.
But the problem is they pull out the paper ballots, trying to figure out which machine got messed up, and here's, if we need to, then we've got the paper ballots in the back to check it, so. But like here, we have a little electronic little telephone dial top.
And ours is touch machine.
Well, touch machine.
And we started
They're all
out,
electronic.
I started out with paper ballots. I then went to the scan ballots. And now we are at Hart Verity 4.2. There's not near as much human error in Hart Verity 4.2.
And I'll tell
I
y'all,
heard you say that you could actually print those out, but I didn't know you could do that. I thought that the machine was in a line.
No, I had the ability to print out in fact, I used to have a recount, even after I got machines. That meant they had random precincts, they would tell me by letter, Secretary of State, recount these ballots. I had to print out every ballot in that precinct and count it, make sure that's one of the things I was telling you about. We have so many checks and balances in this Verity 4.2. It's a great
and
system.
keep in mind, we're fighting, Democrats always fight election integrity issues. They like Senator Hall said, it's always, they say we're trying to keep people from voting. But we also have some good conservative Republicans that have differing opinions of paper ballots. Down in Harris County, some of those Republicans down there, and they're some of the most conservative in the House, they don't trust the paper. And for whatever reason, I don't know if that's going to pass or what.
Well,
So
but
those
you
issues are
counted it.
complicated.
It goes back to Lyndon Johnson and what Mark was describing. I think they're changing their mind.
Are they? Okay, good. But that's one of the challenges we faced in the past.
Guys, we're gonna try to, we could probably talk about this, especially after this year, for the next 6 hours. I'm just thankful to get 2 hours of y'all's time, and we're there, but we've got one more topic to cover in an open forum. So, and then maybe after that, if y'all want to stay, we can probably take a couple of questions. But I always kind of find that after you get to the 2 hour mark, you start losing people. So let's move on to the electricity crisis. Who didn't have power last week? Who didn't have water? When we needed it the most, we didn't have it, right? So let's move to that. I know Bob had some remarks he wanted to make, or I think he did.
Yeah.
If you did. So if you want to start, and then we'll just have a dialogue about this, and,
Okay, I'll just give you my take on what happened, because the security of our electrical grid system is what I've been working on for the last 7 years. And I sat through and participated in a good bit of the Senate hearings as we had people come through and from ERCOT and PUC and VISTA and Encore and all the various groups involved in it. It was, I would say that what happened last week was essentially a perfect storm. And I don't mean the weather we had, but of a number of things that came together and happened. It's like what we experienced in the military. You can have one or two things break, but the disaster comes when you have multiple things that go wrong. And while people are trying to figure out where to point the finger, where the problem is, I'll just give you the punchline. If you're going to point a finger any place, you need to point it at the Texas legislature for not having done its job when it should have done it. But let's set that aside. And so where were we? Where we were with what we had in a mix of power out there was where we've been for about the last 2 years now, that we have operated in the state with a load capacity that is barely adequate to service Texas. We came closer this time to losing our grid than we ever have before, but numerous times we have come close to not being able to provide what's being demanded. And the basic thing is the system operates on supply and demand. The power companies supply the electricity, you and industry are the demand, and it's driven by demand. It's not, and electricity is not something that you can fill up and put in a bucket like water and use it sometime. It can only be produced at the instant it's being used. So the challenge, the power companies are continually changing the output to meet what the demand is. And over the last several years, well, I say there's been a lot of fingers pointed at wind power and solar power as being the culprits. Well, I say that's not what our problem was, per se. We know that wind and solar are not reliable sources of power. The sun only shines half the time. The wind doesn't blow at night and a lot of other times. It only has a 50% efficiency at best. But it wasn't the equipment that failed, the snow that got on the panels. It was the policy behind it that led to the green energy. That policy behind it is what caused us to lose about 150 coal plants around Texas over the last 10 years that shut down. It was the policy behind it that forces our gas-fired plants to not be able to produce at maximum capacity because they go above a certain capacity in production and they exceed the environmental limits that were laid on it. The federal limits. It was the policy behind it that has put $19.4 billion into wind and solar power that could have been put into improving the reliability of our fossil fuel power, and the continuing $1.4 billion a year that is going into the subsidies behind it. It is the difference between how the wind and solar generation is treated by ERCOT in the delivery of power and the penalties when they're not available. I think it's kind of complicated, so I won't get into that. But how they're treated. And so with the great growth we've had, and talk about our capacity, which really isn't there, then you had the event come up where the temperature dropped rapidly, the demand went up fast, and there had to be a quick change in supply to meet the demand. And in those circumstances, as it was going up, power generating stations failed. They couldn't come up the way they were expected to, so others had to be brought up. They couldn't come up. And so we got into the point where we had more demand than there was power available. And in order to keep it balanced, because if you don't keep it balanced, the whole system crashes. And I mean, that's when it crashes, it burns up. And we came within seconds of being out of balance too far that we could have burned up the entire system in Texas and be out of power for months of the equipment was burned out. Let me finish, Bob. Okay? And so that turning off the power in order to keep to certain areas where some of you may have gone through the rolling blackouts or shut out in order to keep it balanced, unfortunately actually shut off power to the gas suppliers. And when the power was shut off to the gas suppliers, they couldn't supply gas to the gas generators, so we lost even more generators, went down. And so the whole system, the way it's structured, the relationship between the PUC and ERCOT, which is a private corporation, it's a nonprofit established by the government, and all of those things with their policies of not having tested their software, not having gone through simulated challenges like we would normally do in the military to the worst case condition. They kind of did a powder puff simulation. And they got beyond that and they found their algorithm didn't work, the algorithms failed. And so all of those happened and brought us very close to losing it. The places that went down because they were not winterized, the legislature in 2011 took that up. They addressed it. They talked about it, and they failed to act on it in 2011. Had they done that, our situation would not nearly been as bad as what it was today. And one of the reasons I am so passionate about us getting this right is that I don't want the 92nd legislature in 2031 looking back at the 87th in 2031, looking back at us here in 2021 saying, why did they kick the can down the road? Because they may not have those seconds to recover, and then the state will really be in trouble. Most people had not until last week, and I will say, I'm not going to ask you to show your hands, ever really gave much thought to how important electricity is. It is the third most important thing to sustaining life. Even the president of ERCOT and others that testified this week pointed that out. It's something everybody takes for granted, and they should be able to take it for granted. But not understanding how severely it damages our ability to live is something I think more people now understand, and the people will be behind what we can do in the legislature this session to once and for all fix our electrical grid system so it's reliable, so we have a resilient system. Okay, so, Bob, go ahead.
Last question. In the next 10 to 15 years, electric cars are coming out. How's that going to affect the grid?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, we have moved from a mechanical society to an electronic society. There is nothing in our life that does not have somewhere in it a battery, a solid state device, or whatever. Our communications, our pacemakers, you name it. There's everything that sustains life in there. Our population is growing, and we are moving towards more stuff that's electrical. And so the demand is going to, we have to fix it. This is not an option. And I hope that we can have legislators down there that have the backbone this time to stand up against the power companies. We could have done this, except we have the PUC and ERCOT is basically owned and operated by the power companies. They only do what the power companies tell them to do because of their tremendous influence.
The big one.
All of them. All of them. And that's the reason we didn't get our grid resiliency bill passed last session that came very close. It got to the committee you're going to be on this time and got stuck there. No, calendars.
Oh, okay.
They got stuck in calendars. He'll tell you, calendars is the place that things kind of go die sometimes. But it's a place to get stuff out
We're
too.
learning that it's a unique animal.
Yes.
What did you say that the legislature didn't do in
2011,
2011?
they did not pass the bill to require the winterization of the fuel suppliers and the power generators. They passed on that. Now, I say that's a problem, and I stand here to tell you I'm a small government person, but when we start talking about that part of our society that's a monopoly, that it's not a true free market, that people don't have their choice in, and that people's lives depend on it, this is an area where I feel the legislature has a responsibility in protecting the people of Texas to step in and make sure that those that are operating in that monopoly are not using the system to their benefit and the detriment of the citizens it's supposed to be serving.
And keep in mind, if we mandate, whatever, winterization, resiliency, whatever, it's gonna cost money. And so who is that cost gonna be passed down to? And it will be passed down to the consumer. So we wanna make sure that the government's not doing too much, but we wanna keep that balanced.
Yep. Wait, ahead.
I just wanted to ask you to briefly, you probably could talk this up all afternoon, it's probably that complex, but just more or less kind of in a nutshell, kind of summarize what legislation needs to be done in order to correct. I think you probably covered some of it by, you say, getting the DEC or somebody to regulate the power companies and force them to do certain things that they traditionally have not forced them to do. Because like you said, keep the government out of people's pockets, like make the power companies do.
One of the things we need to do is we need to change the financial structure, the way the whole system operates, so that there is more incentive for companies to come build a $900 million power plant. Right now, the system, because of the green energy and its false cheap cost. See, the cost of wind energy and solar on the system is lower than the others, but it's only because it's shored up with subsidies. Take away those subsidies, make them operate just like the gas-powered plants do, so that we have consistent competition across the spread of whether you're nuclear, coal, oil, gas, hydro, air, wind, whatever. Everybody operates in the same set of rules. And then you would have a system that would bring competition in with the fossil fuels. Everything's being done at the federal level with the environmental rules is to try to drive us away from fossil fuels. And only fossil fuels are reliable, period.
And keep in mind, the way the system works is power generators, be they wind, coal and gas, solar, they're bidding to sell megawatts of power into the system by the minute. They're bidding that instantaneous. And when you have an entire industry that's getting $30 or $40 per megawatt as a subsidy from the federal government, and then you've got coal and gas over here, they have to bid against that. Well, they can't compete. And so they start to go out of business because they can't compete. These guys, the wind and solar, can bid at a loss and get the bid, and then they make money because they get money from the federal government. So we have a deregulated market, quote, deregulated, but then we have the government coming in and giving certain areas an unfair advantage. We need to reapply the free market. Let the market decide. And then the wind is, like Senator Hall's saying, is not reliable. There are some days when the weather's just right that 50% of our energy in Texas is from wind. They produce that much some days, not all days. The other day they were producing about 4% when everything went down. And so, yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yes.
I do not disagree with what either one of you said about the cold and wind and things like that. But I think most of us understand that the sun doesn't shine at night and the wind doesn't always blow. Those things are not consistent, and I appreciate you guys working on that. But I see some things that we can do now, right now, that would aid and help. For instance, checks and balances in voting, checks and balances in the systems that we already have in place while we develop new systems, new places. And I have this saying that I think most of you could agree, people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And I don't know why somebody's not out there inspecting to see what is going on and what systems are operating with backup, with redundancy, and some of those things. I think we could start there tomorrow by being, somebody out there checking it, somebody watching for it, somebody looking out for our communities and our citizens. I certainly wouldn't put my 3-year-old daughter in charge of the cookie jar in the kitchen and leave her by herself. Somebody has to go through every once in a while, count cookies. And I think those are things that we can do today. Not discounting anything you guys have said or are working on. I appreciate that. I think we need some redundancy, we need some other systems, but there's some uncommon sense, because it's not very common anymore, but it's going out there and inspecting and making sure that we have those things. Because I think we could turn up the heat, if you will, on some of these companies if people find out there is no redundancy, if we did have another major catastrophic event, they're not prepared for it. But anyway, I just think there's some simple steps.
Judge, you're absolutely right about that, and that came out of the hearings, that isn't done, that we have to do some of that. But part of the problem is a basic operating philosophy. You know, those of us in the military, we know that periodic maintenance is performed on most things to replace those things we expect to break so they don't break when we need them. The power companies operate in general to failure. They don't replace something until it fails, and then they run out and replace it.
That's kind of my point.
Yeah, and
I worked for hospitals for 25 years, and I was responsible for these very things. The hospital can't shut down in the middle of an OR. We had an emergency backup. We had redundancy. We had some other things. And I was the guy that was on the line and called in the middle of the night if something went wrong. I had people on staff and people there, but it happened. And again, I think there's some things that we can do currently. I think, you know, it's a bigger issue, it's a complex issue, and there are many points to address.
Well, Judge, and I think you'll see those will be in the phase of phasing in what we can do right now and what we need to move to.
That's good.
One of the things as simple as up until about 20 years ago, our gas-powered plants had storage tanks full of fuel oil, different grades of, you know, from diesel up to that sludgy oil that comes out of Canada. And they had storage tanks with just a good old fuel oil. And if they lost their natural gas supply, they just go out there and open the valve and run diesel in there and keep the boilers going. And the environmentalist wackos started 20 years ago, you know, getting rid of that fuel oil backup because of emissions. You know, we don't need to be burning this diesel. So some of them still have some, but that's just a basic, to me, a common sense thing to back up.
Well, yeah, we also used to have the wellheads for gas enclosed and had a capability to keep them heated, and we had to get rid of those because of the EPA. And
right.
So we've got stuff that has moved us into this. Good, Eddie.
Thank y'all for explaining that, because I think that helps us, and I know that y'all are going to be on the right track. I don't know the answer to this, but when was the power deregulated in the state of Texas? Like 2004, it was kind of like during Bush. Was that kind of a, so can somebody?
No, I think it was in Bush.
Governor Bush?
It was under Governor Bush. Oh, yes.
And prior to 2000.
So I think, and I'm just asking this because I think in the back of my little brain cells it still works. I think I remember that about half of the states still had less price per person or per square foot of home, whatever it was, than Texas did when we deregulated. So that might be something when y'all are kind of working this and massaging it within the legislative and the Senate that we might kind of discuss as well.
And you bring up something that made me think. Remember, Texas, about 90% of Texas has its own power grid. And the other 10% around the edges, like where we live up here, is outside of their power.
East and west.
Right. And so, one of the things we're hearing is people are wanting us to dissolve into one of the bigger grids. We do not want to do that.
Absolutely
We want to keep our, whatever we do, we've got to keep our own grid. So, right. And that I just thought of that while you were talking. There's a strong push to go back to regulated, and I don't know that that's the answer, but then to also give up our grid. We do not want to do that.
I think we can get there if we take an honest look at what we're doing now and where the problems are and try to fix the problems. I don't think we need a completely restructure, go back to a 100% capacity market. That's the other type of market we have. I think that would be too expensive to do that, and I don't think that would be right. I think we've identified in the hearings that we've had, and we will as we continue to dig into it, where the shortcomings are in what we set up. I mean, if nothing as simple as, if you got algorithms to help you control to keep that balance, you got to make sure they work all the way down to the end. Don't just test them at the top and assume they're going to work all the way down to the end. If you know what froze now, let's take steps to make it doesn't freeze again, and what else do we need to do it
It's
to
the
protect to it?
ranges, right? I mean, it's kind of like at the tops and the bottoms, so you
Yeah.
have to make sure that things work.
You know, I think we find that there are things that if we can just not let our solutions be driven by the power companies who are more interested in themselves than the people of Texas. Steve?
Where has, in all of these discussions, especially with both the House and the Senate so far, has there been any consensus about where the money's gonna come from to pay the, went from $60 a megawatt hour or kilowatt hour to $9,000 an hour? My church, 3 days, nobody there, nothing on, we got a $2,900 bill. Where's the money gonna come to pay for these extreme?
That's one of the major problems that I see in the system that was allowed to be set up, but the power companies dictated the price increase curve that was designed to incentivize power companies to provide generation. And during this storm, we went from what's normally a $25 an hour charge to $9,000 an hour. And we've got a few people in this district, got heard from one that normally got a $500 bill that just got $17,000 bill for his money. Encore testified yesterday in the hearing that their customers will see no increase in their bill, however it shakes out in the end, because nobody can figure out where the money went right now. Nobody has given us an answer. In 2 days' testimony, I still could not figure out where all that money, we're talking about close to $50 billion in there. They don't end up having any money when it's all done with. But
Are they funded from the different generators?
Yeah,
They receive money in and they pay the money out.
Right.
They've asked for the money to be paid for them, but they haven't been paying it out.
yeah, it's a catch-22, because people don't have the money to pay in, but they've got the obligation to pay out. I fear that one of the things that may come out of this is that a significant number of our power generators will go bankrupt. And they will, that's step one. Step two is they will be bought up by the two big guys. And we will all of a sudden go from a state that has power being generated by lots of entities to power that only comes from two big companies. And that's what I hope we can stop.
We're starting to get the hook over here. Don't forget to
Yeah.
fill out your complaint form.
Again, we could sit up here and talk about this stuff all afternoon, but everybody's got stuff they gotta go do, and their families to go be with and everything. Thank you, Bob, thank you, Cole, Linda, thank you, for coming. And did y'all enjoy this? Was this helpful?
Yeah.
We're gonna do more of these, and, Christie, want to make a couple remarks today, right here at the end, and then,
As you leave, I've got some handouts here for you. One of them I need to talk about is the pamphlet from AAPS on what they say you can do to protect yourself from the COVID.
We got a little bit more comics, y'all can just hang on.
hey, guys, Christie has a couple remarks to make. Give us about 5 more minutes, and we'll be out of here.
I really just wanted to let everybody know that I appreciate you showing today. I know you took time out of your Saturday, that you couldn't spend time with your family, but the testament to me that you care about these issues. And I hope that you'll, get in touch with me if you want to get more involved, if you want to volunteer for any of the different, opportunities that you have here. Please take care of my card, send me an email, or call me, we can have a schedule time to meet, talk if you'd like. I appreciate everybody's.
That's what we need.
Thank you all.